Well, it's looking increasingly likely that we're going over the fiscal cliff. I hate that term. Let's just call it Taxmageddon. Because that's what it is, really. I mean, there's also a sequester with some spending cuts, which will probably hurt us, at least certainly our national security and the defense industry. But Taxmageddon is the big concern. Come January of 2013, the individual income tax rates will revert back to where they were pre-2001. The capital gains rate will go from 15 to 20%. The AMT will change. The payroll tax holiday will end, which I thought that was a dumb idea in the first place. But it's a massive tax hike. Now, I think that one of the impediments to a deal being reached to avert this is the media's failure to accurately and comprehensively report the relevant facts underlying these negotiations. Take, for example, the debate we're having over whether to raise revenue through eliminating or reducing tax credits and deductions, closing loopholes, they say, or what President Obama just wants to do, which is to raise tax rates.
As you've heard, a key part of the debate is between raising tax rates versus just closing tax loopholes. But if you do the math, you'll see closing loopholes like the mortgage interest deduction or the charitable contribution deduction won't come near the trillions needed to pay down the debt. In fact, if you get rid of the top 10 loopholes, which would be nearly politically impossible, the U.S. government would only pull in an extra $834 billion.
I think there's some bipartisan agreement that closing loopholes would be a way to go, to raise revenue. The problem has been the math of that you can't get enough to actually fill the hole by simply closing loopholes and deductions for the wealthy.
Well, neither does raising tax rates, which President Obama wants to do. If we're ever going to balance our budget, then we've got to deal with this huge spending problem. There is simply no mathematical formula, no combination of tax rates that's going to yield the kind of revenue we need to pay for all the spending at current levels. By the way, this is another problem I've noticed. We seem to be hung up on this tax issue. It seems like every indicator is that they're still debating taxes, and the debate is centering around how to best raise tax revenues. What about spending? I mean, spending is what creates deficits, and the president has yet to make any serious concessions on spending. The Republicans have made concessions on taxes, indicated a willingness to put revenues on the table. Why isn't the president offering specific ideas for how to significantly reduce spending? For God's sakes, his initial offer as part of these negotiations included more spending. By the way, considering that federal tax receipts from individual income taxes alone are up 26% in the last 2 years, why do we need to raise anybody's income taxes? Now, don't get me wrong. I think John Boehner did a very smart thing agreeing to put revenues on the table so that he would appear reasonable and willing to compromise while the president appears to be digging in and taking a firm stand. But why aren't these journalists, so-called, asking Democrats to explain the necessity of raising taxes? I mean, for God's sake, last year total federal tax revenues increased by nearly 6.5%. Did the economy grow by 6.5% last year? No! So why have tax receipts gone up by so much? Even that article I showed you didn't attempt to answer that question, but whatever the reason, it's crystal clear that you do not need to raise tax rates in order to get more tax revenue. Yet, this seems to be the one thing that President Obama is insisting on, the one thing he has indicated no willingness to compromise on in these negotiations, that tax rates have to go up on some people. Why is that? At least one media outfit has offered an explanation, if only through its commentators.
The breakthrough that the president is talking about is to break the Republicans, to create a civil war in the House by insisting that they go back on the idea of not raising rates, which is economically a correct idea. It encourages economic growth if you lower rates, or at least you keep them the same. This is all about politics, nothing about economics.
Whether that's the case or not, my central point is that if anybody's tax rates are going to go up, then the taxpayers who are going to be affected by that tax increase deserve an explanation from the people who want to raise their tax rates, who want their rates to go up, why it's necessary. And the media is not doing their job trying to extract that explanation from those politicians who are insisting on a tax rate increase. So let me know what you think. Leave a comment below. Check out my blog. Follow me on Twitter at RightWingGenius, and subscribe to me on YouTube. That's it for now. As always, don't mess with the right-wing genius.